Every time you boot the game up.
You knew
You knew what you were getting into. Welcome, everyone, to the Drunken Joystick. Today we're going to talk about Far Cry 2, the dark horse of the Far Cry series.
Dark horse, I like the term polarizing because most people who are fans of Far Cry either love this game to the point that it is their favorite, or they hate this game and think that it is a letdown compared to some of the other entries.
Well, let's dive into it.
I love the game, man. I love this game, and I can remember the hype. It was unreal when this game was being, teased, and little gameplay videos were coming out. I think it was October of 2008, I think is when it finally came out.
That sounds right.
It did very well.
It did, and it's also the reason that the three of us have bought so many Far Cry since. It's the game that got us into the franchise.
And they immediately took a different route. I wonder why that is for Far Cry 3.
I think that might be part of why it's such a polarizing game. Is there's a lot of stuff in there that people and the gaming community did not react well to.
I mean, Far Cry 2 was very different from the first Far Cry game. It's kind of like a horror game. It gets really weird.
It gets weird.
And I'm just pulling from my memories. You know, there was like some weird mutated something. Something was going on this island. I don't remember. When Far Cry 2 was first announced, I wasn't excited for it because I was like,
really?
oh, that's scary. Like, I don't want to play that.
Oh,
I just
going
knew,
off of...
I kind of remember telling you, like, I don't think we're going to like that. But then, like, the demo videos you were talking about came out and they were teasing, like, the fire mechanics and all. Oh, okay.
Which was, like, one of the truly revolutionary things that this game did.
It's still a signature of Far Cry 2, is the fire propagation.
Literally, you could cut off an entire enemy's route, contain them to a village, burn down the trees around them.
I don't want to say that other games ripped off Far Cry 2, because I'm sure other studios were developing this idea, but I think Far Cry 2 really helped other studios explore adding this to their games.
Another one of the really cool things about this game was the death mechanic, which made it very polarizing. If you go down and you have a buddy ready, they'll come to your rescue. Then you can continue playing as normal as long as you get out of the situation you're in.
Yep.
If you don't have a buddy available, you automatically go back to your last checkpoint, which could be hours ago. Or your last save point, I'll say. And there was not autosave.
Yeah, so if you forget to save or you get really engrossed in the game and 2 hours go by,
which has happened
several
times.
We don't have a buddy.
Frustrating? Yes. Badass? Yes. Yep. And going off of that, when you do have to call on your buddy to rescue you, if they die,
they're gone.
If they die, they die.
I still remember one of my favorite things about that game is if your buddy goes down, you have a couple options. You can just walk away, just leave them. If you have a syringe, some health, you could bring them back.
If not...
Oh my gosh, I still remember. I don't remember which buddy I had in mind, but like there's this animation where you can pull out your sidearm, and I'm thinking, do I want to do it? And while I'm thinking, my buddy grabs a gun and is just like, do it. Puts it down. I'm like, what kind of game is this? It was so dark.
Pretty dark. And we haven't even touched on the malaria aspect.
Well, that's what I was going to mention was you have malaria. You have to constantly be getting yourself meds and keeping yourself alive.
That was something a lot of people, when they say they didn't like the game, that's one of the first things they bring up.
Oh, no. In the middle of sniping?
Dude. I'm out of Twisted.
The malaria pills, the weapon jams.
Oh, I love
which
that.
can fail in the middle of the most important freaking moment.
It's jammed.
It says something about how gritty a game is when our favorite moments are when we are in the brush, there is a fire going on, an ambush happens where 2 jeeps full of people show up and are shooting at you, and your weapon jams in the middle of all that shit.
There's no way this guy's doing this. Okay. And I add on top of that, you need to hit LB to take a pill in the middle of all and then you don't have any left. So you're like, this game just really...
It just sends you out to the wolves, dude. It doesn't give a shit. It is
a hard game.
But you know what? That's good.
I love it. The weapon failing.
Oh, man.
Is just...
Your weapons failing can really change everything.
Yeah, and if you pick up a weapon from an enemy, you might pick up a really good gun that you don't have access to yet through the weapon dealer.
Gonna regret this.
But it's probably in terrible condition.
Oh, yeah.
And I could go on and on about the grit and the immersion of this game.
It's really the biggest selling point for it.
It's crazy.
Oh, yeah. One thing that I did not like was how quickly the outpost regenerated enemies or respawn enemies, I guess.
Agreed.
I mean, I know they did it so that it was always exciting driving from point A to point B, but I would have liked the easier travel once in a while. It just was constant.
And it makes it feel a little less rewarding when you take out an outpost.
Exactly.
If you go the wrong way on a road, you turn around and go back, you have to do the outpost again.
Pretty much. They're back.
We don't got time for this. Enemy dead bodies are still there, but new guys are moved in.
I think that was a big...
Got the call from the boss. We're filling the outpost again.
It was their first foray into outposts, which were one of the revolutionary features of this game that they kept in other titles.
Very true.
But they didn't do them right. It was their first try. They had a couple of things that were different. And now you see in other Far Cries, when you take over an outpost, you can choose to reset it at your leisure, but otherwise it stays captured.
On the topic of complaints and gripes here, I will say the story is not strong. Not a strong point.
No.
The acting, not very good at all.
The acting is abysmal.
Yeah, you can tell that they just kind of got some people off the street.
Like, hello, how are you?
See that guy? He's got the malaria pills. He'll help you.
Yep, yeah, exactly.
Even for me,
Jackal, I can appreciate like how they like set him up to be this figure who is all fearing, like everyone fears this dude, but you never see him, first of all, which has plagued the Far Cry series villains in a lot of instances.
So long.
I will say, moving on from Far Cry 2 into future releases, they've definitely gotten a lot more cinematic with their story, and I gotta applaud them for that.
That was something else like the Outpost. I think that Far Cry 2 was the test case.
Yeah.
And future games got better because the villain, the Jackal, wasn't a bad villain. He was just, they delivered poorly on making him memorable.
Right. So, if we had to score this game,
I think a better way to rate it would be, most people have this out of the 5 Far Cries as 1 or as 5. They love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Where would we put it?
Like, I could give it an 8 out of 10 easy for a score, but to put it in order from my favorite to least favorite, that's tough.
I have it 3rd. I have it behind 3 and 4. Next to Far Cry 3, I think Far Cry 2 is the most influential on the series. Because of all the new concepts, the outpost, the fire propagation, the grit, it really helped Far Cry come into its own, and 3 was able to finish that off. As much as I like that stuff, I play a game for the story first. And Far Cry 2's was lacking, and looking back on it, I just don't have as much fun playing it. So I think because of that story, I can't put it above Far Cry 3 and Far Cry 4.
I think I'm going to have to give it a number 2 spot on my list.
Which game is it behind?
I think Far Cry 5 is my favorite up until the last 15 minutes of it. I mean, but I'm not just going to rate the entire game just on a piss poor ending to the story. I like the gameplay mechanic. I like the exploration. I liked everything else they did about that game. But then Far Cry 2, for a lot of the same points you said, because it was so influential, it's got to be high on my list. But yeah.
Guys, I think I'm gonna have to put it number 1.
Number 1.
I'm serious.
All right.
Because you guys know, I still go back and play it, even like
every couple years. It's like, hey, let's.
If we're just chilling, I'll just boot it up and start playing it again. Like,
hell yeah!
It's the only Far Cry that I do that with. So
it's the only Far Cry we keep going back to.
Yeah.
It's also one of the only ones we all still own. That's staying power.
It's a hardcore survival simulator almost.
For as good as the recent games are, none of the Far Cries have replicated that grit that Far Cry 2 had.
None of them have.
So we all give it positive reviews, but we also mentioned enough stuff in there that even if we don't agree, we can understand some people's justifications for saying this is the worst game in the series.
It's not for everybody, and I think that's why they changed it so much, is because they wanted it to be for everybody. Obviously, you want to hit as big of a market as you can, and if you have a hardcore, almost permadeath system, in some cases permadeath with your buddies, and
I wouldn't mind seeing that
even as a separate switch on, switch
I want
off.
it as a difficulty or an option that you can toggle. They say, I want to play it with weapon jams, with permadeath.
They need a Far Cry 2 mode.
Yeah, just bring that back.
Honestly, bring that and apply it to your modern games.
Clanker and Drinker.
The drinks are now gone.
Thank you for tuning in to the Drunken Joystick as Mike spills his drink all over himself.
I got too excited when we clinked it and drinked it.
All right, we can safely say the drinks are now gone. And thanks for tuning in, guys. Talk at you next time.
That actually scared me. Oh my god. Oh. I zoomed in. I gotta watch that replay. That actually scared me. Holy fuck.